The emergency signal cut through the peaceful hum of the Galactic Council chamber like a knife. Every ambassador present felt their blood run cold as the message played for the third time. It was a Valoran transmission, broken and desperate, filled with the screams of dying civilians and the roar of weapons. "Fire, please, anyone who can hear this," the voice begged in the universal translator language. "This is Elder Veeler of Thesha 9. The Kroth swarm has broken through our defenses. We have no weapons, no military. Our shields are failing. They are killing everyone. Please, we need help. We need the..." Transmission ended in static. Counselor Draven, a tall being with silver skin and 4 arms, stood slowly. His voice was measured, but his hands trembled. "The nearest council fleet is 17 days away at maximum speed. The Valorans have perhaps 3 days before the Kregeth finished their assault." Silence filled the chamber. Everyone knew what that meant. The Valorans would be extinct before help arrived. Ambassador Juan sat in the human section of the gallery, far from the main council floor. Humans were not members of the Galactic Council. They were observers, barely tolerated, always watched with suspicious eyes. She was a small woman with short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had been Earth's representative for 2 years, and in that time she had learned that most species in the galaxy feared her kind. They called humans Deathworlders. In whispered tones, Earth, they said, was a nightmare planet where everything tried to kill everything else. The gravity was too strong. The weather was violent. The animals were predators. And the humans who evolved there were the most terrifying predators of all. Ji-Yuan had tried to change their minds. She had shown them human art, human music, human philosophy. She had explained that humans were capable of great kindness and compassion, but the other species only saw the records of Earth's wars, the footage of human soldiers in combat, the statistics of what happened when humans got angry. Now, listening to the Valor plea for help, Ji-Yuan made a decision. She stood and walked down to the council floor without permission. Dozens of eyes turned toward her, many filled with alarm. A human approaching uninvited was cause for concern. Ambassador Ji-Yuan. Counselor Draven said coldly, "You have not been recognized to speak. I heard the distress call." Ji-Yuan said simply, "Humanity can help." A ripple of shock went through the chamber. Several ambassadors actually moved away from her. "Absolutely not," said Counselor Marisol, a feathered being who represented the Avan Confederation. "We will not unleash humans on a civilian population. Your kind is too dangerous. People are dying," Ji-Yuan said, keeping her voice level. "We have a fleet in the Outer Rim. Only 5 days away if they push the engines hard." 5 days? Draven looked skeptical. That route goes through the Hadron expanse. No ship can navigate those hyperspace currents safely. The gravitational shear would tear any vessel apart. "Human ships can handle it," Ji-Yuan said. "Even if they could," another counselor spoke up, "we cannot allow it. Valorans are a peaceful species. They have never known violence. Can you imagine what it would do to them? To see human warriors, to witness human combat methods, it would traumatize them beyond recovery." Ji-Yuan's jaw tightened. More traumatic than being slaughtered by the Kregeth. "The Valorans asked for help," Marisol said sharply. "They did not ask for monsters." The word hung in the air. Monster. Guy had heard it before many times, but it Still stung, then let them die in peace, Jiwon said quietly, turning to leave. Let it be on your conscience. She had almost reached the door when Draven's voice stopped her. Wait, Gi-won. Turned, the counselor looked old. Suddenly tired. We have no other option. Do we? Everyone here knows it. Valorans will be dead before our fleets arrive, if humans can reach them in time. He paused. Send your ships, Ambassador. But know this, we will hold humanity responsible for anything that happens. If your people harm a single Valoran civilian, there will be consequences. My people don't harm civilians, Jiwon said. We shall see, Mirzal muttered. Jiwon left the chamber and immediately activated her communicator. The holographic image of a stern-faced man appeared before her. He had short, dark hair with gray at the temples, scars on his jaw, and eyes that had seen too much combat. Captain Hanal, Jiwon said, we have a situation. Han Solo commanded the warship Indomitable, flagship of the human Outer Rim fleet. He listened without interruption as Jiwon explained the situation. 5 days through the Hadron expanse, he said when she finished. That's going to be rough on the ships. Can you make it? Yes, no hesitation. We'll leave immediately. How many ships? Can you authorize all of them? Whatever you need. Hansel nodded. 12 ships. My full battle group will bring medical teams and evacuation transports. He paused. Jiwon, you know what we're going to face. The Kroth don't retreat. This will be a fight to the death. I know. And you know what the council will say when they see how we fight. Jiwon smiled grimly. Let them say what they want. Right now, the Valorans need soldiers, not diplomats. They need Deathworlders. Hanno's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Pride, perhaps, or determination. Then that's what we'll give them. Hansal. Out. The hologram vanished. Jiwon stood alone in the empty corridor, listening to the distant hum of the station's life support systems. She had just set something in motion that couldn't be stopped. The galaxy would see what humans were truly capable of. For better or worse, she thought of the Valoran children in those underground shelters, crying in the dark while death rained down above them. She thought of human children centuries ago on Earth, crying in their own shelters. During humanity's countless wars, humans knew what it meant to be helpless and afraid, and they had sworn, after climbing out of their own darkness, that they would never let others suffer alone. Jiwon sent one final message to Thesha 9, knowing the Valorans might not receive it in time. Help is coming. Hold on, please hold on. Somewhere in deep space, 12 human warships changed course and accelerated toward the Hadron expanse, toward danger, toward a battle they might not survive. They went anyway because someone had asked for help. Elder Veeler huddled in the underground command shelter, surrounded by frightened civilians and the few remaining technicians who kept their systems running. Above them, the Kragoth continued their assault. Every few minutes the shelter shook as another explosion hit the surface. Dust rained from the ceiling. Children cried. Adults tried to comfort them while fighting their own terror. Elder, one of the technicians, called out, I'm detecting something. Multiple hyperspace signatures incoming fast. Veeler felt a flicker of hope. The council fleet? No. Elder, these signatures are different. Smaller ships, but the energy readings are. The technician's voice trailed off in confusion. I've never seen anything like this. On the viewing screen, space itself seemed to tear open, not the gentle shimmer of standard hyperspace exits, but violent ruptures that blazed with radiation. 12 ships emerged like predators lunging from darkness. They were not beautiful, Galactic Council ships were works of art with flowing lines and elegant curves. These vessels were brutal and efficient, angular hulls covered in armor plating, weapon systems bristling from every surface. No decorative elements, no aesthetic consideration, just weapons and engines, and the clear promise of violence. "What are those?" someone whispered. Lead ship opened a communication channel. A face appeared on their screens and several Valorans gasped. It was a human face, rough features, scarred jaw, dark eyes that seemed to look right through them. When he spoke, his voice was deep and direct. "This is Captain Hansol of the Earth. Vessel Indomitable, we received your distress call. We're here to help." Human, Veeler could barely form the word. He had heard stories about humans. Every species in the galaxy had. They were the Deathworlders, the monsters from a nightmare planet the Council sent. Humans, the Council is 17 days away, Han Solo said bluntly. "We're here now. I need tactical data on the Kragath. Positions immediately." "How many civilians are left?" Veeler's hands shook as he transmitted the information. 8,000 civilians in the shelters. The Kroth have 20 warships in orbit and ground forces in the eastern settlements. Our defenses are gone. We have no weapons, no military training. We are a peaceful people, Captain. We don't know how to fight. Something that might have been sympathy crossed Hansol's face. "That's why we're here. Stay in the shelters, don't come out until we signal all clear." He paused. "This is going to get loud." Connection ended. Veeler stared at the screen, unsure whether to feel relieved or more terrified than before. Above the planet, Commander Yuna stood at the tactical station on the Indomitable's bridge. She was younger than Han Solo, with sharp features and hands that moved across her controls with practiced precision. "Kragath fleet is moving to intercept." She reported 20 warships, all capital class. "They're bigger than our ships." "Bigger doesn't mean better," Hansol said. "Desung, how are your pilots?" "On the hangar deck," Lieutenant Desung checked his fighter squadron. His pilots were strapping into their small, fast attack craft. Each one looked too fragile to survive combat, but Desung knew better. "We're ready, Captain," he said. "Give us a target and we'll clear the way." "All ships," Hansol announced over the fleet channel. "Standard Deathworld protocol, no holding back. These people ask for our help, and we're going to give them a show they'll never forget. Attack pattern Delta. Launch all fighters. Let's remind the Kroth why they should fear Earth." The human fleet surged forward. To any observer it looked like suicide. 12 ships against 20, charging directly into battle with no attempt at strategic positioning. Kragath commanders must have thought the same thing because they held formation, confident in their numerical advantage. That confidence lasted approximately 30 seconds. Desung's fighters screamed out of their launch bays and immediately dove toward the planet, using the gravity well to accelerate to speeds that would kill most species from the G-forces alone. The Kragath tried to track them, but the human pilots were pulling maneuvers that seemed impossible, rolling through weapons fire, skimming so close to each other that their shields overlapped, using each other's slipstreams to gain even more speed. Target the lead cruiser. Desung ordered. Atmospheric entry. Approach. His squadron followed him down into Thesha 9's atmosphere, their holes beginning to glow from friction. Krath cruiser pursued, not understanding the danger until it was too late. As they pulled out of the dive, the cruiser tried to follow, but its shields couldn't handle the atmospheric stress. At that angle, the ship broke apart, pieces raining down in fiery streaks. One down, Desang reported calmly. On the planet's surface, Dr. Hyan Wu prepared his medical teams. He was an older man with gray hair and steady hands, more comfortable with a surgical laser than a weapon. Around him, combat medics loaded supplies into armored transports. The fighting hasn't even finished, one of the medics said. Nervously, shouldn't we wait? People are dying now, Hyan Wu said simply. We go now. The transport launched from the Indomitable's bay, even as the ship fired its main cannons at a Kregeth destroyer. Explosions lit up space around them, but the pilot didn't hesitate, diving straight through the combat zone toward the planet below. In the shelter, Veeler watched his screens in stunned disbelief. The human fleet was tearing through the Krath formation like a pack of predators. Their ships moved in ways that violated every rule of space combat, turning too sharply, accelerating too fast, positioning themselves in crossfires that should have destroyed them but somehow didn't, and they were winning. Human destroyer rammed directly into a Krath cruiser, shields blazing. The impact should have destroyed both ships, but the human vessel pulled away at the last second, leaving the Kregeth ship crippled and drifting. Another human ship flew within meters of a Kregeth carrier, so close that their shields interfaced, and fired its weapons at point-blank range straight through the weakened shield junction. They fight like madmen, Veeler whispered. Like they don't fear death. Elder, the technician, called out in alarm. A ship is landing near the shelter. It's human. Panic spread through the civilians. A human ship here with them. Veeler tried to calm everyone, but his own hands were shaking. What if the stories were true? What if the humans were as dangerous as everyone said? The shelter door began to open. Everyone backed away. Dr. Hun Wu entered first, followed by his medical teams. They wore armor covered in medical symbols and carried equipment cases instead of weapons. The doctor stopped when he saw the terrified Valorans pressed against the far wall. We're here to help, he said gently. I'm a doctor. We've come to treat the wounded. But the battle, Veeler managed to say, it's still happening outside. Yes, Hyan Wu said, as if this was perfectly normal, and people need medical care now, not after the battle is over. Where are your wounded? For the next several hours, Veeler watched as the human medical team worked. They moved through the shelter with calm efficiency, treating injuries, distributing supplies, comforting frightened children. They showed no fear, no hesitation, even though the ground shook regularly from explosions. Above, one of Hyan Wu and LT Unk and GTS medics, young woman named Sunhai, knelt beside Valoran child who was crying from a broken arm. She smiled at the child, speaking softly while she worked. You're very brave, Sanhei said, much braver than I was at your age. Child sniffled. Are you really from Earth, from the death world? I am. Are humans really scary? Sun finished setting the broken bone and looked at the child seriously. Sometimes we are, but only to people who hurt others. You're safe with us, I promise, above. The planet the battle was turning into. A route half the Kroth fleet was destroyed or disabled, the rest were trying to retreat, but the human ships pursued relentlessly, giving them no quarter. Captain, Una reported. Kroth are broadcasting a retreat order. They're running, let them run, Hansel said, but make sure they spread the word about what happened here. I want every Kragath in the sector to know what happens when they attack defenseless civilians. The last Kroth ships fled into hyperspace, leaving their dead behind. The human fleet held position, battered but victorious. 12 ships had defeated 20 and done it in less than 2 hours. In the shelter, Velar received the message from Hansel. The Kragath are gone, you're safe now. We'll begin full evacuation and medical treatment immediately. Velar looked around at his people, at the human medics working alongside them, at the frightened faces beginning to show relief instead of terror, at the evidence that maybe, just maybe, they had been wrong about humans. Thank you, he said quietly. Thank you for coming. Hanso's scarred face showed something that might have been a smile. That's what we do. The celebration in the Valoran shelters lasted exactly 4 hours. Then the sensors picked up the new signatures. Elder Velar, the technician's voice was shaking. More Kragath ships, many more. On the Indomitable's bridge, Commander Una studied the incoming data with a grim expression. Captain, we have 30 Kragath warships incoming. They're bringing their main battle fleet. Hansel stood at the center of the bridge, his face carved from stone. Around him his crew worked their stations with practiced calm. Time to arrival 2 hours. Are the Valoran evacuations complete? No, sir. Evacuated maybe a quarter of the civilians. The rest are still in the shelters or scattered across the settlements. It would take at least 6 more hours to get them all out. Hansel was quiet for a moment. Every person on the bridge knew what he was thinking. 12 ships against 30 was bad odds, even for humans. The smart move would be to evacuate who they could and retreat before the enemy arrived. Save the ships for another battle. Open fleet-wide channel. Hansel ordered. Una activated the communications on every human ship in the fleet. Crews stopped what they were doing to listen to their commander. All ships, this is Captain Hansel. The Kroth are sending their main fleet to finish what they started. 30 capital ships will be here in 2 hours. We are outnumbered. Our ships are already damaged from the last fight. High command would tell us to retreat and save the fleet. He paused, but there are still 6,000 Valorans on that planet who need our protection. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to stay. We're going to fight, and we're going to show these Kroth bastards why Earth doesn't abandon people who asked for our help. A cheer went up across every ship. No one questioned the order. No one suggested retreat. They were human, and humans didn't run. Down on the planet's surface, Sergeant Boa assembled her Marine units. She was a stocky woman with broad shoulders and the look of someone who had spent her life in combat. Behind her, 300 Marines in full armor checked their weapons and equipment. Listen up, Bora called out. The Kragath are coming back with friends. Our job is to get the rest of the civilians to the extraction points before those ships arrive. That means We're going into active combat zones, pulling scared people out of hiding and carrying them to safety if we have to. Some of you won't make it back, I won't lie about that, but those people down there, they called for help and we're going to damn well help them. A young Marine raised his hand. Sergeant, why are we doing this? I mean, these aren't our people, they don't even like us. The whole galaxy calls us monsters. Bora looked at him steadily. You know what I learned growing up on Earth, when someone needs help, you help them. Doesn't matter if they like you or not. Doesn't matter if they do the same for you, you help because it's the right thing to do. That's what makes us different from the Kroth. Now gear up. We leave in 5 minutes. The Marines descended to the surface in armored transports, landing in the middle of settlements that were still burning from the earlier Kragath attack. Bora led her unit toward the nearest civilian cluster, moving through ruined buildings and debris. They found a group of 30 Valor Orans hiding in a collapsed structure, too afraid to move. When Boz's armored figure appeared in the doorway, they screamed. It's okay, Bora said, removing her helmet so they could see her face. We're here to get you out. The Kragath are coming back and you need to be gone before they arrive. A young Valoran named Kalth stepped forward. He was barely an adult by his species standards, thin and fragile, looking like all Valorans. You're staying to fight, but there are so many of them. That's why we need to hurry, Bora said simply. She gestured to her Marines. Let's move people gently. They're scared enough already. The Marines spread out, helping the Valorans to their feet, carrying those too injured or frightened to walk. They were surprisingly gentle for warriors, their armored hands careful with the fragile civilians. Kalth walked beside Bora as they moved toward the extraction point. Why, he asked, why are you doing this? Everyone says humans are dangerous, that you only care about fighting and conquest. Bora laughed, a short bark of sound. Kid, if we only cared about conquest, this would be a lot easier. We could just leave and let the Kroth have this place. But you're not leaving. No, we're not, even though you'll probably die. Bora looked at him. You asked for help, so he came. In orbit, Engineer Taeyong floated in the void of space, his suit small, thrusters keeping him steady against the hull of the Indomitable. Behind him, the ship's damaged armor showed scorch marks and holes from the previous battle. He worked quickly, welding plates over the worst damage while his team did the same. Across other sections, Taeyong, his supervisor, called over the comm, get back inside. The Kragath fleet will be here in 90 minutes. Almost done, Taeyong said, his welding torch sending sparks across the metal. Just need to seal this breach. We can finish repairs after we retreat. We're not retreating. Then, after the battle, Taeyong paused in his work. There might not be an after. I'd rather the ship be ready to fight now. He returned to welding. Around him, empty space stretched infinite and cold. But he didn't feel afraid. He felt useful. The Kragath fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 30 massive warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons already powering up. They expected to find the planet defenseless, the human ships long gone. Instead, they found 12 human vessels waiting for them in a defensive position around Thesha 9. The Kragath commander couldn't believe what he was seeing. They stayed 12 ships against our entire fleet. They must be insane. He ordered the attack. The human fleet Met them head-on. This time there were no clever tactics, no surprise maneuvers. Just brutal, desperate fighting as 12 ships tried to hold back 30, the space around Thessia 9 became a storm of weapons fire and explosions. On the Indomitable's bridge, Una called out damage reports in a steady voice, even as the ship shook from impacts. Shields at 60%. Port weapons array offline. Fire on deck 7 and 8. Damage control responding. Keep firing, Hansel ordered. He stood at the center of the chaos, unmoved by the violence around him. All ships tighten formation, protect the transports. Below them, Bo's Marines were still evacuating civilians. Every minute the fleet bought them was another 100 Valorans saved. A Kroth cruiser broke through the defensive line and dove toward the planet. Desidder squadron intercepted it, their small craft swarming like angry insects. They couldn't destroy it alone, but they damaged its engines enough to slow it down until a human destroyer could finish it off. The battle raged for an hour. 2 human ships were destroyed, their crews dying as they tried to protect the planet, but they took 6 Kroth vessels with them, and they bought enough time for Boa to complete the evacuation. Last transport is away, Bora reported. From the surface, all civilians accounted for. We're heading to pick up now. Negative, Han Solo said. Get your Marines to the deep shelters. The Kroth will bomb the surface once they realize the civilians are gone. You won't make it to orbit in time. Bora understood immediately. They were being left behind. Understood, Captain. We'll dig in and wait for extraction after you deal with the fleet. Good luck, Sergeant. You too, sir. Bora and her Marines found the deepest shelter they could and sealed themselves inside. Above them, the Kragath began their bombardment, but the humans had already saved what they came to save. In space, the odds were starting to tell. The human fleet was being overwhelmed despite their skill and ferocity. More ships took critical damage, more crews died at their stations. Then Hansel gave an order that made his bridge crew go silent. All damaged ships prepare for collision course. We're going to ram them, sir. Una looked at him in shock. The ships are too damaged to fight effectively. Anyway, Hansel said quietly, but we can still make their deaths count. Set us on collision course with that carrier. Evacuate all non-essential personnel to the escape pods. Captain, you can't. I'm not abandoning my ship, Hansel said. Now give the order. 3 human ships, too damaged to continue fighting, turned and accelerated toward the largest Kragath vessels. Their crews evacuated, leaving only the captains and a skeleton bridge staff. At the last moment, they detonated their reactors. The resulting explosions destroyed 4 Kragath capital ships and severely damaged 6 more. The Kroth fleet broke. They had come expecting an easy slaughter and instead found enemies who would literally turn their ships into weapons rather than retreat. Remaining Kroth vessels fled into hyperspace, leaving the battlefield to the victorious but heavily damaged human fleet. On the planet, Calth stood with the other evacuated Valorans, watching the space battle from the transports windows. He had seen the human ships sacrifice themselves. He had seen the Marines stay behind to protect him and his people. They really did it, he whispered. They stayed and fought for us. Elder Veeler stood beside him, tears streaming down his face. We called them monsters, he said quietly, but they're the bravest beings I've ever seen. Aftermath was quiet in a way that felt wrong. After all the explosions and screaming and chaos, the silence felt heavy, like something physical pressing down on everyone who had survived. Human fleet hung in orbit, damaged and battered. 4 ships had been destroyed completely. The remaining 8 looked like they had been through a war, which they had. Holes were scorched and broken, weapon systems hung useless. Emergency force fields held atmosphere inside sections where the walls had been blown away. Inside the Indomitables medical bay, the lights were too bright, and the air smelled like antiseptic and blood. Dr. Hyan-Woo moved from bed to bed, his hands steady despite 40 hours without sleep. His medical team worked around him, treating human and Valoran wounded without distinction. Doctor and nurse called. The commander needs you. Hyan-Woo found Commander Yuna in a surgical bay. She was conscious, which was remarkable considering her injuries. Her left arm was gone below the elbow, the stump wrapped in emergency medical foam, burns covered half her face, but her eyes were alert, focused on the tactical display hovering above her bed. Commander, you should be resting, Hyan-Woo said firmly. Can't, Yuna said through gritted teeth. Need to finish the damage assessment. Captain, Hansol needs the reports. The captain can wait. You've lost a lot of blood. I continued tactical operations for 6 hours after the injury. Yuna said, I can manage a few more minutes to finish the reports. Hyan-Woo shook his head, but couldn't help feeling a touch of pride. Only a human would keep working with injuries that would have killed most species. Fine, but after that, you're getting proper rest, even if I have to sedate you. Deal. Elder Veeler had insisted on coming aboard the Indomitable despite the danger. The Valorans had been evacuated to a safe location on the other side of the planet, but Veeler needed to understand what had been sacrificed for his people. He walked through the ship's corridors escorted by a young Marine. Everywhere he looked, he saw evidence of the battle, blast marks on walls, emergency repair crews welding panels, exhausted crew members slumped at their stations, too tired to move, but still working. They passed through a section where the wall had been completely blown away, replaced by a shimmering force field that held the atmosphere in. Through it, Veeler could see space and the debris field from the battle. Pieces of ships drifted past, human and Croth mixed together in death. So many, Veeler whispered, so many died. The Marine beside him nodded. She was a young woman named Gina, barely 20, standard years old, with a bandage wrapped around her head. 3,000 crew members lost, another 1,000 injured. 3,000. Veeler felt sick. 3,000 humans died for us. They didn't die for nothing, Gina said quietly. They died protecting people who needed protection. That matters. They reached the medical bay where Yuna was. The commander looked up as they entered, taking in the Ellers's distressed appearance with her one good eye. Elder Veeler, she said, you shouldn't be here. It's not safe. Neither was staying to fight 30 warships, Veeler said. He moved closer, staring at her injuries in horror. You lost your arm and you kept fighting. Someone had to coordinate tactical, Yuna said with a slight shrug, then winced as the movement pulled at her. Injuries? Besides, it was only my arm. I could still think clearly. Only your arm? Veeler couldn't comprehend it. Valorans would have gone into shock from such an injury. They certainly wouldn't have continued working. How is that possible? Pain management training, Yuna said simply, and adrenaline mostly. Adrenaline, she looked at him seriously. Elder, we came here to do a job. We did it. Your people are safe, that's what matters, but the cost is what it is. Yuna interrupted gently. We knew the risks when we came. Every person on these ships volunteered to be here. We made our choice. Captain Hansel found Veeler standing in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. The captain looked tired, lines of grief carved deep into his face. He said nothing, just stood beside the elder in silence. I don't understand your kind, finally said. The entire galaxy fears you. Everyone says humans are violent and dangerous, but you came when we called. You stayed when you should have run. You sacrificed yourselves for strangers. Hansel was quiet for a long moment. My home world, he said eventually. Earth. You know, they call it a death world. Yes, everything on Earth evolved to survive. The plants, the animals, the bacteria, everything fights to live. And humans were the ones who survived it. All we learned to fight. We learned to be strong. He paused. But we also learned something else. We learned that the strong have a responsibility to protect the weak. Because we know what it's like to be weak. We know what it's like to be afraid and helpless and hoping someone will save us. Your history, Veeler said slowly, it was violent. Very. We spent thousands of years fighting each other, war after war. Millions dead. We almost destroyed ourselves several times, hands clenched on the railing, but we learned slowly, painfully. We learned that strength without honor is just cruelty, that violence without purpose is just destruction. We learned that the greatest strength is knowing when to fight and what to fight for, and you fight for others, even those who fear you, especially those who fear us, Han Solo said, because they need protection most of all. Footsteps echoed behind them. Ambassador Jiwan entered the observation deck, followed by a delegation from the Galactic Council. They had arrived with a relief fleet now that the danger was past, now that it was safe. Counselor Draven looked around the damaged ship with an expression that might have been shame. Captain Hansel, we came to assess the situation. The situation is resolved, Hansel said coldly. The Valorans are safe. The Kragath are gone. Yes, we saw the debris field. Draven hesitated. We also saw the casualty reports. Captain, I must ask, was it worth it? 3,000 lives for 8,000 Valorans. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Hansel turned to face the counselor fully, and there was something in his eyes that made the alien take a step back. Was it worth it? Hansel repeated softly. You want to know if 3,000 humans were worth 8,000 Valorans, as if we can measure the value of life like cargo. I didn't mean yes. You did. Hansel moved closer. You came here after it was safe. You arrived after the fighting was done. And now you want to judge whether my people's sacrifice was worthwhile. His voice was still quiet, but it cut like a knife. Every person who died on these ships knew the risks. Every single one of them chose to be here. They chose to fight. For people who call us monsters, they chose to die protecting civilians of a species they'd never met. Don't you dare suggest their sacrifice wasn't worth it. Ambassador Jiwan stepped forward, placing a hand on Han Solo's arm. Captain, she said gently. Hansel took a breath, controlling himself. Counselor, if you'll excuse me, I need to attend to my crew. He left the observation deck, leaving the council members standing in uncomfortable silence. Elder Veeler watched them with new eyes, seeing their perfect uniforms, an unblemished ship, seeing how they had arrived only after the danger passed. You should be ashamed, he said. Quietly, Draven turned to him, surprised. Elder, we called for help and you debated. You worried about what it would look like, about the political consequences. The humans just came. Veeler's voice grew stronger. They fought for us, they died for us. And you stand here questioning whether it was worth it. Elder Veeler, surely you understand. I understand perfectly. Veeler interrupted. I understand that humans who you call monsters showed more compassion and bravery than the entire Galactic Council combined. I understand that my people are alive because of their sacrifice, and I understand that we owe them a debt that can never be repaid. Later, in the planet's refugee camp, a small Valoran child approached one of the human Marines standing guard. The Marine was a big man named Wu Jin, his armor scarred from combat, his face tired but alert. The child held out small flower, one of the native plants that grew on Thesha 9. It was a simple gesture, but the child's hands were shaking with nervousness. Wu Jin looked down at the flower, then at the child. Slowly, carefully, he removed his helmet and knelt down to the child's level. His scarred face softened into something approaching a smile. Thank you, he said quietly, taking the flower with surprising gentleness. This means a lot. The child smiled, losing some of their fear. You saved us, they said in their small voice. Mama said you're a hero. Wu Jin's eyes grew wet, but he blinked the tears away. I'm just a soldier kid, but I'm glad you're safe. Around the camp, other Valorans were beginning to approach the human soldiers, offering small gifts, words of thanks, tentative smiles. The fear was still there, but it was being replaced by something else: gratitude, respect, understanding. That evening, Elder Veeler called a gathering of all the Valorans. They stood in the largest shelter, thousands of them looking to their elder for guidance. My people, Veeler began, we have learned something important. These past days, we learned that the stories we heard about humans were both true and false. Yes, they are warriors from a death world. Yes, they are capable of great violence, but they are also capable of great sacrifice, great honor, great compassion. He paused, looking around at the faces of his people. 3,000 humans died, protecting us. 3,000 beings who had never met us, who knew we feared them, who owed us nothing. They gave their lives freely because we asked for help. And that, my people, is a debt we must never forget. The Valorans bowed their heads, respect on the indomitable captain. Hansel sat alone in his quarters. On his desk lay the list of casualties. 3,000 names, 3,000 people who had followed him into battle and never came home. He knew each name. He had memorized them all. It was the least he could do. A knock on his door. Come in, he called. Ambassador Jiwen entered, carrying 2 cups of earth coffee. She set one in front of him and sat down without asking permission. You did everything right, she said. Did I? Hansel gestured at the casualty list. 3,000 people dead, Jiwen. 3,000 people who saved 8,000 lives. Who showed the galaxy what humanity really means. She sipped her coffee. Council is drafting a formal apology. Several species have requested military cooperation agreements. Handle what happened here changed something. The galaxy saw us not as monsters, but as protectors. At what cost? At the cost that war always demands, Juan said quietly, but those people chose to pay it. Honor their choice by making it mean something. Hansel looked at the casualty list again, then at the message he had received from Velar. The Elder had promised that the Valorans would build a memorial listing every human who died. They would guard it forever, he said. They would make sure the galaxy never forgot. They called us Deathworlders, Han Solo said. We are Deathworlders, Juan replied. We're from a planet that tried to kill us every day, but we learned something that most species never had to learn. We learned that life is precious. Because it's fragile, we learned that protecting others matters more than protecting ourselves. We learned what it means to be truly strong. Han Solo nodded slowly. The galaxy will never trust us completely. Maybe not, but after today they'll respect us, and they'll know that when they call for help, we answer. Outside the window, the stars shone cold and distant. But somewhere down on Thessia, 9 Valoran children were sleeping safely in their beds, no longer afraid of the darkness, and that Hansel thought was worth any price. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Thessia 9. The galaxy had changed. That time, though not everyone wanted to admit it, the story had spread like wildfire through every civilized system. The Valorans made sure of that. They transmitted recordings of the battle, testimonies from survivors, images of the human medical teams working through active combat to save lives. They shared everything, making sure the galaxy saw the truth of what had happened. Now, Admiral Hansel stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned flagship Unity, looking out at a sight that would have been impossible a year ago. His fleet hung in formation, but it wasn't just human ships anymore. Valoran vessels flew alongside them, so did ships from the Avan Confederation, the Methane Breathers Alliance, and a dozen other species. All of them had requested to join the new combined defense force, all of them wanting to learn from the humans they once feared. Admiral Commander Una called from her station. She had a new prosthetic arm. Now, advanced technology that moved like the real thing. She wore it with pride, a reminder of what she had survived. Incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. They're ready for you. Hansel nodded, straightening his uniform. Put them through. The holographic display activated, showing the interior of the council chamber. Every seat was filled. The council had expanded since Thessia 9, and now included a prominent new member. Ambassador Juan sat in the human seat, the first of her kind to be granted full council membership. Admiral Han Solo, Councillor Draven, spoke, his voice respectful in a way it had never been before. We have reviewed your proposal for the new defense protocols. The council has voted to approve them unanimously. Thank you, Councillor. Hansel said. We'll begin implementation immediately. There is one more matter, Draven continued. The council wishes to formally apologize once again for our actions during the Thessia 9 crisis. We allowed our fear and prejudice to nearly cost 8,000 innocent lives. We are grateful that humans are more honorable than we were. Han Solo could have said many things to that. He could have pointed out how the council had arrived. Only after the fighting was done, how. They had questioned the sacrifice, how. They had called his people monsters, but he had learned that some victories were won not through words but through actions that spoke louder. The past is the past, Counselor Han Sol said simply. What matters now is building a better future. After the transmission ended, Yuna approached him with a slight smile. You're getting diplomatic and you're old. Age, Admiral Hansel snorted. Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation to maintain. Down on Thesha 9, the memorial stood. Completed at last, it was a simple structure, not grand or elaborate, but powerful in its simplicity. A wall of dark stone listed 3,000 names in careful script. Above the names, a single sentence was carved in multiple languages. They came when we called. They stayed when they should have run. They gave everything so we could live. Young Cal Seth stood before the memorial, no longer the frightened civilian who had hidden in the shelters. He wore a human military training uniform, now one of the first non-humans accepted into the Earth Defense Academy. The training was brutal, designed for beings who had evolved on a death world. But Cal Seth endured it. He had to. He owed these names that much. Beside him stood Sergeant Boa, now promoted to lieutenant. She had volunteered to help train the new alien recruits, teaching them not just how to fight, but why to fight. It's a lot of names, Cal said, quietly looking at the memorial. It is, Bor agreed. Every one of them mattered. Do you think they knew when they made the choice to stay? Did they know some of them wouldn't come back? They knew, Boa said, but they stayed. Anyway, that's what makes them heroes. Calc, not that they weren't afraid. They were, but they stayed anyway. Calc reached out and touched one of the names on the wall. I want to be like them. I want to be someone who stands and fights when others need protection. Bo put a hand on his shoulder. Then you're already on the right path. At the Galactic Council headquarters, Ambassador Juan prepared for her first major address as a full council member. She stood in her quarters looking at her reflection in the mirror. She looked the same as always, short, unremarkable by most standards, but she represented something now. She represented hope that the galaxy could change. The doors opened and Admiral Han Sol entered. He was on the station for a strategic planning meeting, but he had made time to see her before the address. Nervous? He asked. Terrified? Juan admitted. I'm about to address representatives from every major civilization in the galaxy. What if I mess it up? You won't, Hansel said with confidence. You're the one who convinced me to answer that distress call 6 months ago. You're the one who knew humanity had more to offer than violence. Trust yourself. Juan nodded, taking a deep breath. Thank you. An hour later, she stood at the council podium, looking out at the assembled representatives. Some looked at her with respect, some with remaining fear, some with curiosity. All of them were listening. Members of the Galactic Council, Juan began. 6 months ago, the Valorans sent a distress call. They were dying and they asked for help. This council debated. You worried about the political implications, about the proper protocols, about whether it was worth the risk, and while you debated, my people acted. She paused, letting that sink in. You called us Deathworlders. You called us monsters. You were right. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. We are from a death world. Earth tried to kill us every single day of our evolution. We faced predators, diseases, natural disasters. In our own violence, we survived all of it, and yes, it made us dangerous. It made us strong. It made us capable of terrible things. Juan's voice grew stronger, but you forgot something important. That same world that taught us to fight also taught us to protect. It taught us to stand together against threats. It taught us that the strong have a duty to defend the weak. Earth didn't just make us warriors, it made us warriors with honor. She looked around the chamber, meeting eyes with as many representatives as she could. 3,000 humans died at Thesha 9. They died protecting people they had never met, from a species that feared them with no guarantee of recognition or reward. They died because it was the right thing to do. That is what it means to be human. That is what it means to be from Earth. The chamber was silent. This galaxy has lived in peace for so long that many of you have forgotten what peace costs. You have forgotten that someone must stand guard while others sleep safely. You have forgotten that freedom requires sacrifice. Juan's hands gripped the podium. Well, humans remember. We remember because our history is written in blood and sacrifice, and we offer that memory, that strength, that determination to this council and to every species in the galaxy. She straightened. You feared us. That fear was not entirely unjustified. But after Thesha 9, I hope you understand something else. When the darkness comes, when the monsters arrive at your door, you want Deathworlders standing beside you. You want beings who know how to fight, who know how to survive, who know how to win. But more importantly, you want beings who know what they're fighting for. Humanity offers you a choice. Juan continued. You can continue to fear us and keep us at arm's length, or you can accept us as partners. Let us teach you what we know. Let us stand guard together. Let us build a galaxy where no one ever has to send a desperate distress call wondering if anyone will answer. She finished simply. The choice is yours, but know this: whether you accept us or not, if someone calls for help, humans will answer. That's who we are. That's who we will always be. The silence after her speech lasted for several heartbeats. Then slowly one representative stood and began to applaud, then another, then more. Within moments, the entire council chamber was on their feet, the sound of applause echoing off the walls. 3 weeks later, Admiral Han Sol stood on the command deck of the Unity, reviewing reports. From across the galaxy, 36 species had formally requested defense pacts with humanity. 12 more had asked for military advisors. The human fleet was expanding rapidly and now included integrated units from a dozen different species. Admiral Yuna called. We're receiving a distress signal. It's from the Outer Rim mining colony under attack by raiders. Han Sol didn't hesitate. Set course. Alert the fleet. Maximum speed. Yes, sir. Yuna paused. Sir, the colony is only 2 days away by standard route, but we could cut it to 18 hours if we take the Hadron Expanse. Han Sol smiled slightly, remembering another desperate run 6 months ago. Then we take the Hadron Expanse. Someone needs help, Commander. We don't make them wait. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, ready to answer another call, ready to prove once again that humans could be counted on. Far away in Kroth space, the military commanders reviewed their intelligence reports with growing unease. The human fleet had grown. More importantly, it had allies. Now species that had once been easy targets were now protected by Deathworlder warriors. The Kragath, Supreme Commander, reviewed the battle. Recordings from Thessia 9 for the hunt. Time watching human ships ram their vessels, watching human soldiers shield civilians with their own bodies, watching a level of ferocity and determination that made even the Kragath uncomfortable. Mark all systems with human defense. Pax as restricted. The Supreme Commander ordered, we do not engage. Forces protected by the Deathworlders. We do not want that kind of fight. For the first time in their conquering history, the Kragath were retreating. Not because they had been defeated, but because they were afraid. On Thessia 9, the sun set over the memorial. Valoran children played. Nearby, their laughter echoing through the peaceful settlement. They played without fear now, knowing that somewhere in the dark between the stars, human ships stood watch, and on the memorial wall 3,000 names gleamed in the fading light, a reminder of what had been sacrificed and what had been gained. Galaxy had learned to fear humans. Now it learned to trust them too, and somewhere another distress call would come, another desperate plea for help from people who had nowhere else to turn, and the humans would answer. They always did.